You're listening to Malmborg Report, where we discuss the intersection of creativity, work, and the systems in which they are shaped. My name is John Malmborg, and my special guest today is Avi Taknafram. He is a labor organizer, and he's been very heavily involved with the movement in particular to organize at Amazon. Welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Thank you, John. I'm doing good. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but, I feel like that's pretty true for a lot of people, especially a lot of people that work at Amazon, especially right now, getting off their feet. And then recently, Amazon at my facility, I was hired on as a seasonal employee, and they basically fired, I have to imagine it'd have to be upwards of 100 people that were hired on as seasonals all at once in one big batch, all on the same day.
That's brutal. Yeah. How long had you been at Amazon prior to this unfortunate wave of layoffs?
I had been working at Amazon a bit over 2 months. My facility, LDJ5, there's a long history there, but I was working at Amazon, and then all of a sudden they decide to, fire a whole bunch of people.
Well, you know what? That really speaks to the subtly exploitative model that Amazon has in terms of hiring to begin with, putting aside all the other labor and pay issues they've got, right? The fact that they rely on a labor force that's labeled as seasonal, regardless of when they are hired. They might be hired in April or May or December, it doesn't matter. Basically, everyone they hire, unless it's a brand new facility, is listed as seasonal. And what that allows them to do, obviously, is on one hand, tout a series of benefits that they offer every employee on day one. Simultaneously, they're actually offering that to virtually no one on day one. On top of that, there is the open-ended aspect where it allows them to, callously shave off excess employees. What are your thoughts on the way they go about doing this and the lack of warning? And
yeah, it's a really frustrating position to be in, not just for everyone that's gotten fired, but, even some of the seasonals that have been there quite a few more months, people that have been there since June or whatever, are still around. But you have people that have been working there upwards of a year that are still classified as seasonal. People will get hired, work 11 months, get fired, apply again, continue to be seasonal. So you have people that basically it's Amazon's way of skirting the law. Amazon, the legal system says you work here so long, you're no longer seasonal. But Amazon says, oh, we can just hire you for 11 months, fire you and hire you back as seasonal, and essentially just keep people in this loop of being seasonal forever so that they don't get the benefits of a job, so that they don't have a permanent position, so they don't have the protections that the law and that, Amazon says they provide. It's just a way of making people more precarious. It's a way of having a threat constantly looming above your job. It's a scare tactic, honestly. A way to keep people, a way to have Amazon pay less benefits so that it's not, on their bottom line. This is something that I think is really important for people, whether they're interested in organizing at Amazon or any other workplace, especially one that's non-union in the US, is just that there is no protection for us unless we have a union. And me and, my 100 coworkers that got fired are a perfect example. A lot of people I hear are afraid of organizing or getting involved with a union or getting a union started up. And, they think, these are the people that are pro union, they'll get targeted and they'll get fired. And I'm not going to say there's no risk to that, but there's a risk to not having a union. If we had a strong union contract at my building, Amazon wouldn't be allowed to fire people like this. So long as there is no strong union contract, Amazon and every other company in the US can keep on pulling this BS and just, fire people out of nowhere with no warning. I actually didn't find out from HR or from, a manager or anything like that. This is how Amazon usually does it. I found out because I couldn't log on to my A to Z app.
That's stunning. That's stunning.
But yeah, if there's no union, there's no protection for anyone. And tomorrow you could figure out, hey, I can't log on to my A to Z app. No clue why, and then you're gone.
Yeah, that is exceptionally frustrating. It would certainly be within their capability, putting aside the general practice of doing seasonal layoffs. Certainly they could muster up 48, 72 hours to give someone a little heads up if they gave it, right? So it's really frustrating to see the confluence of like a corrupt system and very poor last minute management create a system where someone could literally be on their commute to work and find out that they're not coming in that day. I'm curious, what were the things that brought you to Amazon to begin with? Was it, like many others, just the thing where it's like, okay, this is a job, a temporary thing I'll just do for a little while? Maybe it was the proximity to where you live. What was the main reason you applied to Amazon in the first place?
So I had been working at an Amazon owned facility, but not an Amazon facility in Michigan for a few years. Whole Foods. So I was a meat cutter, or a meat clerk. And so they're a grocery store chain that's owned by Amazon. And, I come from a union family. I'd always been interested in like organizing, doing things because, a lot of people that work at Amazon, I saw coworkers that were homeless. I saw coworkers that were just getting beat up by the company every day, injuries, because of their jobs. I had a coworker that almost cut the tip of his finger off at Whole Foods. This is normal stuff for people working service industry type jobs, not being able to afford rent. I met my boyfriend who also works at Amazon, and I moved out to New York in September. And, he works at Amazon. It kind of makes sense. So I was just like, yeah, like I'll go apply and work at Amazon. If he's going over there, to work a job, it doesn't make sense for me to be working on the other side of the island and having to commute a long time or whatever. So it just kind of made a lot of sense logistically, just in terms of my life.
Yeah. So I can relate to that quite a bit on a few fronts. Where I live in upstate New York. I live in what I would describe as a very remote area. And the reality is there's not much of an economy around here. So for me, when I'm looking for a job, I need to find something that I can commute to. It might be a 20, 30, 40 mile commute, depending on where you go in the Hudson Valley. And Amazon just happened to be something that was within distance. I was able to get a certain schedule that kind of made sense with my lifestyle. So there was basically just a viability thing with Amazon. And when I first came through the door, although I was certainly aware of the broader labor practice complaints and issues regarding Amazon, I kind of went in with a relatively neutral mindset. It wasn't my intent to immediately organize the place because I also relate to having family members who are union people. But the idea is that when people go to Amazon, they're not going there because, oh, I really love boxes. I really love Amazon Prime. It's a practicality thing. And some people go in there and at first glance, they don't think it's too bad. Maybe the managers are friendly. Maybe they meet some coworkers and they're like, oh, these are nice people. This job isn't that demanding. I've had worse jobs, right? But in the midst of this newer labor movement that maybe you can go into depth about, what I think we're all reckoning with is the cost of living is just unsustainable for most people. The hourly wages, although there have been incremental increases periodically, don't match the cost of living, let alone in New York City, right? But certainly nationwide as well.
Yeah. I'll say that a lot of people come to Amazon and, a lot of people, the reason they come or the reason they stay is because it does pay a lot better than certain other jobs. I come from working in service industry And even out in New York City, the starting wage rate for like working at a grocery store is usually around like $15 an hour, which for trying to live in New York City is insane. It's crazy to try and, pay rent, pay New York City rent, pay New York City grocery prices on 15 an hour. So a lot of people do come to Amazon because they're like, whatever, pay may not be like absolutely amazing, but it's really not that bad. And I think what people start to realize from working there is if you have some experience with other sort of jobs or with the trade union movement, or just like, stuff you learn if you get involved in organizing, the first thing that you learn just working there day one is that they really, treat employees like crap. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Even if you have like a nice manager or you have friendly coworkers, which I did, I love my coworkers. Some of my managers were quite friendly. If you have an issue, if there's a problem that you have, they're not going to do anything about it. The managers aren't going to be able to solve it for you. They don't want to solve it for you. Some of them do, but most of them don't. Most of them just want to get you out of their face. I mean, I had a coworker who was in the military, at a reserve program and had to do military trainings, which is something that, Amazon has like, it could be a legal thing, but Amazon has this thing where you can basically not have UPT or points deducted for like engaging in these trainings that that you're obligated to participate in if you're in the military. And my coworker talked to HR, talked to managers over and over again, emailed, called over and over again to try and make sure they didn't get UPT or points deducted. Still got UPT and points deducted. And this is something that's no fault of their own. This is not, they just like said, whatever, one day I don't want to come into work. This is like, a planned thing that Amazon said that they would accommodate, and they just don't. And people's jobs are always on the line, and Amazon doesn't care. Amazon really doesn't care.
No, there are so many instances, I've related to it periodically doing leaves of absences. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. But the problem is when they don't, nobody gives a shit, right? Like, and there's really no point person to go to. You go to one manager, they'll send you to HR. You go to HR, they'll send you to a manager, or they'll send you to the app. The app will auto reject your request for a resolution, or they'll tell you to go back to your site. So it's just a runaround. Even in serious cases with medical leaves and things like that, people get jerked around endlessly to the point where it's never even resolved. It's a really frustrating situation. If you are ever so unfortunate to have anything in your personal life go wrong where you need to get a leave of absence from work, it's going to be a problem.
Yep. And, it's things like that. It's like leaves of absences, but it's also just the work itself, I mean, you try to work this job for a long period of time, you're going to get injured, but you're going to have body issues. Your fingers might break, or you might get carpal tunnel. There are people in their 20s and their 30s with carpal tunnel just from working at Amazon. There are people in their 20s and 30s with broken backs from working at Amazon. People that'll deal with these issues for the rest of their lives. And, this is what happens when you have a company that doesn't care about its workers. Amazon takes its workers and hires a whole bunch of people, says they care, and then they turn around and they throw you out in the cold. They throw you out in the cold to fend for yourself, and they just don't care. And I think this is something that a lot of Amazon workers realize. I think it's something that motivates a lot of Amazon workers to organize, is just that, Amazon really doesn't care. And that even if, the pay might be better than working in a grocery store or whatever, the job is a lot harder and you're taking on a lot of risk. Just working in the warehouse, I mean, you never know, like heavy machine parts, flat moving, people getting terrible injuries. You're taking on a risk just walking into that building, and people want to feel respected when they're taking that risk. It is about pay, It's also about respect and feeling treated like a human being by managers, by the company, and then all of that. So I think that drives a lot of people to organize. And then also, like, even if the pay is better than a grocery store or whatever, for comparable work, for working in a warehouse, for doing like 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, like a lot of people do, comparable places like UPS, they're paying way more. They're paying 25, 30 an hour to start. I visited a UAW picket line. It was actually an auto parts warehouse in Michigan when I was living out there. And, after their contract, their starting wage is $25 an hour in Michigan, which is way cheaper. And they're getting up to like $35, $36, $37 an hour after 4 to 5 years. Meanwhile, at Amazon, after 4 to 5 years, you're capped out and you're making, even in New York City, you're not making more than, even if you work night shift, even if you're capped out, you're not making more than 26, 27 an hour maximum. And that's working night shift. That's being capped out, and you'll never get any more money. You'll never get another raise so long as you work there. Once you're capped out after 3 years, you're never going to get more money.
No, absolutely. And I think when it comes to organizing, as evidenced by the, great actions taken in December, there was a lot of progress on this front, but there's still so many broader obstacles in terms of recognition and further buy-in and more locations. But in terms of just the general difficulty of organizing, what I have noticed is that people either take a view that they don't necessarily value their work correctly. They'll say things like, oh, yeah, they're just going to automate us someday. They'll say things like, oh, Amazon's warehouses don't make money. The money is made through web cloud services and all that. But in terms of organizing, what sort of approach do you do when you're talking to a coworker and trying to get them to maybe get that sense of worth and that sense of like, you know what, I can do something more than just put up with what Amazon is giving me?
Yeah. My building with the automation point, that one, we actually had a very interesting situation in particular. I think that was a lot less of a challenge at my building because they actually used to automate part of the job. We have a cross dock in the building I worked at. And it used to be that they had the little yellow robots that run around and they would move and stage carts and pallets and stuff. And they actually got rid of those.
You made the point that in the process of your warehouse going from automation to non-automation, I think it kind of shows that there's like this idea that Amazon is this like infinitely growing behemoth that like has no limitations and could theoretically just axe people entirely out of the equation. But the reality is there's limitations of scale, resources, the cost benefit analysis. And at a certain point, it is just cheaper to put humans in a room and say, move this box. People should fear automation, but not in this sense that like it's a doomed reality that corporations won't still need us. And thus we have a lot of power.
Yeah. I think there's two things on that point that I think really, I think actually do motivate people to take action. One is that the longer Amazon is around, better the technology is going to be, the more chances Amazon will have to automate you. And regardless of what their workers are paid, they're going to want to automate as much as they can. And there's no better time to organize than now. In 2 years and 3 years and 4 years and 5 years and 10 years, we might not have as, much power because Amazon might automate more of it. And if we don't get a union, you can ask people straight up, if we don't get a union contract, then your job might be gone in 3 years anyways. They might decide to automate it. And it's only with the union contract that you have the ability to say this part of the job won't be automated. It's only with that, like coming together, getting a strong union contract and like exercising our power and our ability to strike that Amazon realizes that it needs its workers. And then beyond that, to the original question of like, people thinking that they don't have worth at this company, I think that a lot of times just ask them straight up, like, what do you think you're worth? I think most people don't think they're worthless. If you ask people, like, how much do you think you're worth? How much do you think you're worth getting paid, going through the trouble and the craft that Amazon puts you in every day? And I think people generally think that they are worthwhile. I think most people go on living not because, just inertia. I think people, they have things in their lives that they realize do have worth. And they're worth a lot more than working for $20 or less in an Amazon warehouse. And if you ask them straight up, like, what do you think you're worth? I think people are going to respond more than what Amazon pays us.
I've grappled with the sense that people are underestimating their own power, but specifically using that as like a prompt in the context of reaching out to a coworker is not something I've considered. And I see a lot of potential power in that in the right situation, of course, because that's also the dynamic part of labor organizing, as I've been learning, is that, everything is case specific. There's no, set of lines you just roll out to convince someone they should join a labor union. It's really about the relationship building. It's about the trust earning. And, of course, there are things you can appeal to with your coworkers, but at the end of the day, it's really just about giving them an opportunity to see what is before them.
Yeah. And, if you want to get people on board and, show them that a union is the way to go, the biggest thing is you can't just tell people something. You got to show them something. You got to take action. You got to be the person that, people come to if they have issues. And that's how you build trust. And to some extent, that's all a union is. It's a group of coworkers that recognize that the company is not their friend and is in fact their enemy, and that they, trust each other enough that they're willing to take action to improve their situation and fight against, the people that treat them like crap every day. One thing that me and some of my coworkers did at my facility, it's a really small thing, but just taking people to HR and going together. And even if it's just 3 people going into HR together, being we're here together and showing some degree of collectivity and power and walking people through the processes of how, things work. It shows people that you care and that they can trust you because you have their back. And that actions speak a lot louder than words. And that really helps build trust and cement, the union. Really your union, our union, as the answer to our problems. And even if it's something very small, it shows that people can trust you. And when it's time to do something bigger, like strike or take a union recognition vote or whatever, they're going to say, well, this person really helped me out here. This person that I know is active and engaged in, our union fight, they care. And they care not just, in words, but in deeds. And they're going to say, well, I want to put my faith and trust in this project.
Definitely. There have definitely been cases at my facility where, whether it's a walk-in on the boss or 2, 3 people coming together with a joint complaint, it might be regarding one person's particular case, but it's you don't just want that one-on-one interaction with the management or HR, because that's what Amazon thrives on, and that's what they promote as their, go-to. They're like, oh, we want this direct relationship with you. That's the only reason we oppose unions, because they just want to, have an equitable relationship as a multi-trillion-dollar corporation with just some individual person working at Amazon, right? But yeah, I agree that knowing what's going on with your coworkers in terms of, have they gotten any write-ups? Have they been talked to about productivity? And depending on the severity of the case, encouraging them to follow up, but also saying, I'm going to come with you. We'll go up to that AM or that PA or whatever and say, what's up with this case? And that is a fantastic way to build trust but also proof of the power of having more than one person.
Yeah. And, it can be a scary thing for your coworker or for yourself to do that, to go up together. But I know after one time I did that, I literally had my coworker coming up afterwards and thanking me for getting them together and saying, hey, we need to do something about this. Even if it's scary in the moment, it's something that is necessary, in the long term, even just for your job. I mean, if you're getting harassed by a manager, if a manager's throwing write-ups around willy-nilly at you, then, you need to take action. There's no other choice, because if things go on as they are, then you're going to get fired. And if you don't show Amazon that, there are people behind you, then they're going to say, oh yeah, we can fire one person. That's not an issue. We can get rid of this person, whatever.
So to sort of take more of a distant view here, I suppose this is a two-part question. Where do you see things going from here in the broader labor movement, namely the Teamsters affiliation? And where do you see you going from here? Because it sounds like you now have a little more free time than you did before.
Maybe I can start with myself and then move to the Teamsters. Personally, I need another job. I need to pay rent.
Right.
I'm still going to be talking with my coworkers. I'm still going to be doing what I can, talking to people that work at Amazon and trying to show them that the union is the only way forward. That our union that we build together, that you need to be involved in building. That's the only way forward for us. And then I'm going to get another job. And it's another thing that people are really afraid of is what if I get fired? And the answer is that there's another job. There's another job, and it sucks to get fired, but it's not the end of the world. It's going to be another crappy job, but it's another job. And I think people are really afraid of that. In terms of the broader movement, I'm not as qualified to speak on this as a lot of people, but I think that what I'm seeing now every day is more and more Amazon workers, people that work at fulfillment centers, sort centers, delivery stations, air hubs across the country, are recognizing that things are not okay and that things need to change. And, people want to take action, whether it be the delivery stations that are organizing with the Teamsters, or whether it be the fulfillment center in North Carolina organizing with Cause. People across the country are organizing, and Amazon workers are taking this fight into our own hands because there's no one that can come to save us. Having Teamsters resources is amazing. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to change in these warehouses until Amazon workers stand up together and we say to Amazon, we need changes. And that's the only way forward. The only way forward is together with our coworkers, and it's the fight. And if we don't fight, then we're going to lose our jobs. And things are just going to get worse. Eventually, people will realize it's something that, it's a fight you need to take on. Even if you don't want to take on this fight, a lot of people aren't born fighters, but it's not a fight that you get to choose whether you're a part of. It's a fight that you have to take on. You have to take on if you want to keep living. There's just no other choice.
Yeah. It's at a certain point, it's a matter of survival for someone who's working in a job, and whatever Amazon likes to tout as their, special culture, maybe they throw out things like pins or raffle tickets and that sort of thing. None of that means anything relating to your material well-being. And unions are the only protected entity. When we were at the theater in Beacon, because that's where we first met, someone on stage made a really good point that unions are kind of a unique example that might be relatively rare in the United States, where collectivity is sort of like the norm. Everything in the United States is very individualized and everyone's focused on their own thing and this and that. But unions are about coming together, doing something collectively and reaping collective rewards. Do you have any other thoughts regarding people, whether they're in a workplace that is a good candidate for unionization, or maybe they're looking from the outside, maybe they work in an industry that might be different, maybe they work in an office environment, maybe they work in creative fields. What would you say to people who are listening to this on the inside and the outside?
Well, I'll say that, the way that the system is set up, the way capitalism sets up working people across the country, it sets us up to fail. And you can either fail alone and struggle to survive by yourself with no one with your back, or you can take on the fight together. You can take on the fight with your coworkers and with people that, love them or hate them. These are people that that care about you, that you care about. There's just no other choice. You fight alone or you fight together, and anywhere can unionize. Anyone can be union. A union is not a recognized thing on paper. A union is not a union recognition vote or signing cards or whatever. A union really, at the end of the day, is you and your coworkers getting together. And I'm not saying against, getting a union recognition vote or union card sign. That's really important. But at the end of the day, a union is you and your coworkers getting together, realizing there are changes that need to be made, and, sticking together to make those changes, whether you're in an office or whether you're working in an Amazon warehouse or whether you're in construction or the service industry. It's the only way forward. It's the only way forward, because it's either you fight together or you fight alone. The choice to fight, that was not something that we chose. There's no other choice.
That is a fantastic place to leave it, because I think that's the message that everyone should be considering. So Avi, thank you so much for coming on. And one last thought is that what you did a few weeks back when the strike was about to happen at JFK, you sent me the invite to do phone banking for the ALU. And that is a fantastic example of collaborating, even if it's outside of your direct facility, right? With your broader extended network. Because I was able to bring in 4 or 5 people to pitch in a little bit, even if you're not in a direct position to help, although I was able to actually get on that. But initially, I wasn't even sure I'd be able to join. Just spreading the word to the correct people when it's appropriate and when you have the information is so crucial. Communication is so crucial. And, I'm a novice podcast host at this point, but just having this conversation is the start of what I hope is a contribution to a media ecosystem that is directly lined up with the interests of people like ourselves who are just fighting to survive and living our lives and not wanting to be trampled on by, our capitalist overlords. So thank you for coming on, and we'll be in touch, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great to chat. And I'll tell you that, all of us here in Staten Island, we really appreciate all the Swift farm workers, yourself included, that came on to phone bank. It shows that solidarity, it's with your coworkers, but it's not just with your coworkers at one facility. It's not just at one company. Solidarity is something that transcends borders. Working class people across the globe are f***ed over all in the same way, whether it's here or, working class people all the way to Myanmar. We're all screwed over in the same way, and we don't have a choice. And we all have more in common with each other than we do with Jeff Bezos.
Do you have any recommendations for anyone listening to go follow on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X, anything like that?
Yeah, so we have a ALU IBT Local 1. We have an Instagram page. It's just Amazon Labor Union _Local 1. We also have an X or Twitter at Amazon Labor. And yeah, follow us, but mostly like keep in the fight or join the fight, and we fight together, and we either fight together and we win, or we fight together and we lose. But, if we stay by ourselves, then, we're just going to fight and lose by ourselves.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, John.
Thanks for listening to Malmborg Report. If you enjoyed this episode, follow me on social media at It's John Malmborg and subscribe to Malmborg Report on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Want to stay in the loop? Sign up for my email list at johnmalmborg.com. And if you'd like to support the show directly, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Malmborg Report. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.